What I'm about to share with you isn't just another Washington scandal. It's about accountability, transparency, and whether the people who hold power in this country will keep their promises to you. It matters to every single American. It matters to your trust in government, to your belief in justice, to the future we're building for our children. And right now, as I stand here today, I am deeply concerned about what I see happening in Washington, because Congress has sent a bill to President Donald Trump's desk, a bill that would compel the Department of Justice to release all of its case files tied to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And yet the silence from the White House is deafening. Before we go any further, if you care about transparency and accountability in our government, hit that subscribe button. This is not about partisan politics. This is about whether our leaders will do what they promised. This is about whether justice matters when it's uncomfortable. This is about whether transparency applies to everyone, or just to the people without power. The House of Representatives passed this bill with a vote of 427 to 1. Think about that for a moment. 427 members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans alike, voted to release these files. The Senate then unanimously agreed to pass it without amendment. This is as bipartisan as it gets in today's divided Washington, and yet here we are, waiting for Trump to sign, waiting for announcements that never come, waiting for cameras that are never invited, waiting for transparency that was promised but never delivered. And the question we have to ask ourselves is simple. Why? Trump campaigned on releasing these files. During the 2024 campaign, when he was asked directly whether he would declassify the Epstein files, he said, yeah, I would. He said it again in September 2024 on a podcast, telling the American people that the list of clients probably will be released. His FBI director, Kash Patel, vowed during his confirmation hearing to expose Epstein connections and make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened. His Attorney General, Pam Bondi, went on Fox News in February and said the client list was sitting on my desk right now. These weren't vague promises. These were specific commitments to the American people. And now that the bill is on his desk, now that Congress has done its job, the administration is dragging its feet. Let me walk you through what's happening and what it means for all of us. When Trump returned to office in January 2025, his supporters expected action. They had been told for years by conservative influencers, by Trump himself, by members of his inner circle, that the Epstein files would expose the deep state and the elites who had been protected for too long. But as the months went by, the promises started to fade. In May, the House Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets demanded the release of the Epstein files. Bondi didn't respond before the deadline. In July, the Justice Department released an unsigned memo saying they would not be releasing any more documents, directly contradicting everything they had said before. Conservative influencers who had championed this cause felt betrayed. Trump's own MAGA base started asking questions, and Trump's response? He called it a Democrat hoax. He said Republicans who believed there should be transparency were stupid and foolish. He told his supporters to stop wasting time on it. This is the same man who had promised them answers, the same man who had built his political brand on fighting the establishment and exposing corruption. But here's what changed everything. On November 12th, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released emails from Epstein's estate. In those emails, Epstein talked about Trump. He wrote that Trump knew about the girls. He claimed that one of his victims had spent hours at my house with Trump. And suddenly the pressure became too much to ignore. Trump's approval ratings among his base began to slip. Republican lawmakers like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Thomas Massie, some of his fiercest allies, signed a discharge petition to force a vote on releasing the files. Even House Speaker Mike Johnson, one of Trump's closest allies in Congress, said he supported transparency. And so, on November 16th, Trump reversed course. He posted on Truth Social, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide, and it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax. The House voted. The Senate voted. And on November 19th, Trump signed the bill into law, but the story doesn't end there. In fact, it's only beginning. The bill Trump signed requires Attorney General Pam Bondi to release all unclassified records, documents, communications, and investigative materials related to Epstein within 30 days. That means by December 19th, the American people should have access to the full scope of the Justice Department's investigation. But there are loopholes, and Trump's administration is already laying the groundwork to use every single one of them. First, there's the question of what gets redacted. The bill allows the Justice Department to withhold or redact information that would constitute a clearly unwarranted invasion of personal privacy or information about Epstein's victims. That's reasonable. No one wants to re-traumatize survivors or expose their identities without their consent. But here's the problem. Mike Johnson and Pam Bondi are using protecting victims as a catch-all excuse to avoid releasing files that have nothing to do with victim privacy. Johnson said the bill has serious deficiencies related to survivors' privacy. He claimed it could create new victims by releasing unverified information. But the survivors themselves, the women who lived through Epstein's abuse, stood on the steps of the Capitol and begged Congress to pass this bill. They said they were traumatized but not stupid. They said they have been asking for these files to be released for years, and the government keeps making excuses. One survivor, Sarah Ransom, said at a press conference before the vote, "I am asking Congress, please pass the bill. Please release the records. Stop making survivors fight alone for the truth that should have protected us in the first place." These are not victims asking to be protected from transparency. These are victims demanding accountability. Second, there's the loophole for active investigations. The bill states that the Attorney General may withhold information that would jeopardize an active federal investigation. And here's where things get truly cynical. Just hours after Trump ordered Bondi to investigate Democrats' ties to Epstein, she announced a new DOJ probe. Let me be clear about what happened here. For months, the Justice Department said there was no evidence to support any further investigations into uncharged individuals. In July, they released a memo stating that a systematic review revealed no incriminating client list, and we did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. The case was closed. But then, when Congress forced a vote on releasing the files, Trump suddenly demanded a new investigation. Not into all of Epstein's associates, but specifically into Democrats. Bondi complied immediately, appointing U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton to lead it. And now, legal experts warn the administration can cite this ongoing investigation as a reason to withhold the very documents Congress voted to release. Barbara McQuade, a former U.S. attorney, called it a strategic effort to block the release of further documents. Thomas Massie, the Republican congressman who led the fight to get this bill passed, said he's concerned that now he's opening a flurry of investigations, and I believe they may be trying to use those investigations as a predicate for not releasing the files. Even Trump's own supporters see what's happening here. This is not about protecting victims. This is not about preserving the integrity of an investigation. This is about protecting powerful people from accountability. So what's actually in these files? Why does it matter so much that they be released? The Epstein investigation spans decades. It includes flight logs from his private jet, which was used to transport victims to his private island. It includes emails and communications with powerful figures in politics, finance, and entertainment. It includes witness statements from survivors who described a vast network of enablers and co-conspirators. It includes evidence that federal prosecutors had before they gave Epstein a sweetheart plea deal in 2008, a deal that let him serve only 18 months in county jail for crimes that should have landed him in federal prison for life. The files that have already been released paint a disturbing picture. Emails show Epstein bragging about his connections to Trump. He referred to Trump as the dog that hasn't barked, suggesting he knew things about Trump but wasn't talking. In one 2019 email, Epstein allegedly wrote that Trump knew about the girls and referenced one of his victims spending time at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. Trump has denied all wrongdoing. He says he had a falling out with Epstein in the mid-2000s after Epstein stole young women who worked at the Mar-a-Lago spa. He says he wasn't a fan of Epstein and hadn't spoken to him in 15 years before Epstein's arrest in 2019. And maybe that's true. Maybe there's nothing incriminating in the files about Trump. But here's the thing. If that's true, then why not release them? If Trump has nothing to hide, why did he spend months calling this a hoax? Why did he attack his own supporters for demanding transparency? Why did he only agree to sign the bill after political pressure became unbearable? And why, now that he's signed it, is his administration already building escape routes to avoid full disclosure? The implications go far beyond Trump. These files could reveal a network of powerful men who exploited vulnerable children and got away with it because of their wealth and connections. They could show us how federal law enforcement failed to act on evidence it had for years. They could expose the ways in which money and power corrupted the justice system at the highest levels. And if we never see those files, if they're redacted or withheld or delayed indefinitely, then we'll never know the full truth. We'll never have accountability. And the message sent to survivors, to the American people, will be clear. Justice is only for those who can't afford to avoid it. This isn't just about one case or one individual. This is about whether we can trust our government to tell us the truth. And right now, that trust is fracturing at every level. A Marist poll conducted in October found that 61% of Americans disapprove of how the Trump administration has handled the Epstein files. That includes 88% of Democrats, 69% of independents, and even 25% of Republicans. When you lose trust across the political spectrum like that, it's not a partisan issue. It's a crisis of legitimacy. It's not about left versus right. It's about citizens across the entire political spectrum recognizing that something is fundamentally wrong with how their government is operating. Most Americans, 83% of independents, 84% of Democrats, and 67% of Republicans want the files released in full. They don't buy the excuses. They don't accept the delays. They see what's happening, and they know it's wrong. An Economist YouGov poll from November 2025 found that 80% of Americans believe the government should release all Epstein files. When you can get 80% of Americans to agree on anything in this political climate, that's not just a preference, that's a mandate. That's the American people speaking with one voice and saying, we demand accountability. But here's where it gets truly alarming. When majorities this large are ignored, when the demands of 4 out of 5 Americans are dismissed or delayed indefinitely, people begin to lose faith in the democratic process itself. They start asking themselves, what's the point of voting? What's the point of demanding transparency? What's the point of believing that our votes matter if our leaders ignore us anyway? Democracy depends on transparency. It depends on the belief that our leaders are accountable to us, not the other way around. It depends on the principle that no one, not even a president, not even a billionaire, is above the law. When that principle is violated, when powerful people are protected from consequences while ordinary Americans face the full weight of the justice system, the foundation of democracy begins to crack. And those cracks, once they form, can be incredibly difficult to repair. And we've seen this pattern before. Throughout history, when leaders start prioritizing power over accountability, when they start hiding information to protect themselves and their allies, democracies fail. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually, slowly, imperceptibly at first. It starts with small concessions. One official oversteps a norm and nothing happens. So another official does the same thing. Then it escalates. Minor cover-ups become major scandals. Broken promises accumulate. Key institutions, the courts, the media, Congress, become compromised or weakened, and over time, those cracks widen. Trust erodes. The social contract between the government and the governed frays. Eventually, people stop believing the system can work for them at all. They lose faith in elections. They lose respect for institutions. They start to believe that the game is rigged, that their participation doesn't matter, that the entire system exists to serve the interests of those in power rather than the people. Political scientists call this democratic recession, and it's happening across the globe. Countries that had been stable democracies for generations are sliding toward authoritarianism. Hungary, once considered a thriving democracy, has deteriorated so significantly that scholars question whether it's still a democracy at all. India, the world's largest democracy, is experiencing what experts describe as a diffuse assault on the normative and constitutional underpinnings of liberal democracy. Tunisia, Africa's most promising democracy, suffered an executive coup. And the United States? We're not immune to these historical forces. In fact, we're watching it happen in real time. When a bipartisan supermajority of Congress votes to release documents and the president drags his feet, when victims who have survived unimaginable trauma are begging the government to tell the truth and are ignored, when 80% of Americans want one thing and their government does another, that's the beginning of the crack. That's the erosion of trust. That's what democracy looks like when it starts to fail. You might be thinking, this all sounds important, but it's not going to affect me directly. I'm just trying to live my life. The Epstein files don't touch my daily existence. But you're wrong, and here's why. When government officials learn that they can hide information without consequences, when they see that breaking promises carries no cost, when they watch powerful allies escape accountability, they begin to believe they can do it again and again, with bigger issues, with decisions that affect your life directly. Maybe next time it's not about Epstein files. Maybe it's about a government contract worth billions that was awarded corruptly. Maybe it's about environmental violations that sicken your community. Maybe it's about your elected representative taking bribes from corporations. And when you ask for transparency, when you demand to know what happened, the government looks at how they handled the Epstein files and thinks, we got away with it then. We can do it now. This is how the principle of accountability dies. Not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small moments where the powerful choose themselves over the truth. And when that principle is gone, when citizens understand that accountability doesn't actually apply to those at the top, the entire system breaks down. People stop following rules. They stop cooperating with institutions they see as corrupt. They become radicalized, some lose faith entirely, others become susceptible to demagogues who promise to burn it all down. That's when democracies really start to fail. That's where we are right now. That's what's at stake. We stand at a crossroads. We can accept the delays and the excuses and the redactions. We can tell ourselves that it's complicated, that the government knows what it's doing, that we should just trust them. We can stay silent and let this moment pass. Or we can demand better. We can insist on the promises that were made. We can stand with survivors and say their voices matter. We can refuse to accept a tiered system of justice where accountability applies only to those without power. The decision we make collectively as a nation will echo forward. It will determine what kind of country we become. It will teach powerful people what they can get away with. It will show the world whether American democracy is real or just a facade. And that decision doesn't belong to politicians in Washington. It belongs to you. It belongs to all of us. Because democracy is not a spectator sport. It's a practice. It's something we have to actively defend every single day.